Baltimore Ravens season is over, and now the attention turns to the offseason, and some reports on John Harbaugh's future could signal a worst-case scenario for the Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Ravens, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And thanks so much to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage here on Locked On Ravens. And we're in the off-season mode, and we go every single day in the off-season. We're a 5-day-a-week show that does not change in season or out of season. And there's plenty to talk about. New reports on John Harbaugh's future outline a potential worst-case scenario for the Ravens. We'll talk about that. We'll discuss what major changes could or could not be coming for this team in the coming days and weeks. We'll also just talk about what's next for this team, both from a coaching staff perspective, from a personnel perspective, and also dive into some other off-season thoughts as well. So there's a lot to talk about. And I think starting off with these reports, there were a lot of people who were like, all right, season's over, boom, get John Harbaugh out of here. And I had kind of said throughout the night yesterday, I was like, look, I don't think that this is going to be the Ravens lose and then the next day, John Harbaugh's gone. If that were to be the case and they were to move on from John Harbaugh, it would need to have been, it's going to have to be like days of conversation, right? And thought process for all sides probably, because I do think, and we've kind of heard these reports before the Ravens lost, John Harbaugh, probably has a little bit of say here in terms of like, hey, this is what my vision is, what's your vision? And so a lot of the reports nationally have been about, the Ravens and John Harbaugh having conversations about what both sides' visions are. But earlier on Monday, we did get a couple of reports about potentially what this team could be thinking. And to me, I think that this is a worst case scenario if this does end up coming to fruition. And this is actually something, if you've been listening to me here on the show, I've been talking about this for probably a full calendar year here, ever since the Ravens lost last year to Buffalo, about why this shouldn't happen. So Josina Anderson, who, has done a lot of work as a reporter in the NFL over the years, NFL Insider, said that league sources have been anticipating potential change at the coordinator level in Baltimore. Stay tuned for the latest. And then we also got another report from Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport on the future of John Harbaugh and the staff in Baltimore. And Tom Pelissero was talking about how essentially he believes there's no reason to fire John Harbaugh, or to believe the Ravens would fire John Harbaugh. He said, quote, "There is absolutely no reason to believe that the Ravens would fire John Harbaugh." Mentioned the extension back in March. He said, no reason to think at this point there's going to be major changes in Baltimore, but some level of change does sort of feel inevitable. And then Ian Rappaport said that he wonders about the offensive side of the ball, because what he had talked about when he ended up speaking after Tom Pelissero on this, he said, quote, "I'd be surprised if John Harbaugh said we're running it back with the entire same staff." So, Rappaport mentioned like the only way he sees a split, or like one of the ways he would see a split, is if John Harbaugh and the Ravens like don't have stuff aligned where they want to do one thing and then Harbaugh wants to do another thing, or vice versa. Like that's a scenario Ian Rappaport outlined of, maybe something could happen there. But Rappaport also said, quote, "Sometimes you do need a new voice. If something were to change there at offensive coordinator, Todd Monken would immediately be one of the more in-demand play callers. And I also wouldn't be surprised if there are some additions on defense. Nothing wrong with Zach Wardle, a really bright young coach that a lot of people like. Just some reinforcements maybe on the back end to bolster what they do defensively." Adam Schefter talked about how he doesn't see John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin being fired, but said if the Ravens were to move on from John Harbaugh, he would, in his eyes, be this year's Mike Vrabel of coaching hires. Now, the outline that I got here, and I saw this multiple times on social media from multiple different people, and this is the same thing that I got, is what these people got on social media as well, is that this essentially tells me if what this report says ends up going, the Ravens are going to keep John Harbaugh, they are going to keep Zach Orr, and they are going to fire Todd Monken. And I think that would be the worst case scenario for this team. I think that accomplishes nothing. I honestly think you take steps backwards with that decision-making process. And honestly, maybe firing isn't even the right word for Todd Monken if that's the route that they decide to go and watch. I mean, I'm going to put this episode out and then like 3 hours after it comes out, they're going to make a move and we're going to talk about it obviously here when it happens. So again, be sure you stay tuned because we're going to have reaction shows to every single thing the Ravens do this offseason. But maybe like, let's be honest, Todd Monken, there was some controversy this year with Monken in terms of some of those pieces that came out, and Monken clearly was not happy about them and, showed some passion during the season. I think it'd be a mistake to, again, move on from another coordinator and give John Harbaugh another year because you've done that dance before. How many times have we done that where, oh, well, Don Martindale, nope, in the Lamar era as well, right? Like, okay, well, Greg Roman, now your time is up. And obviously McDonald left and, Morningweg only got the year with Lamar back in 2018. And obviously that started off as Joe's offense and then went to Lamar midseason. But there have already been like multiple coordinator firings or guys moving on. At what point is it, like, what point do you look in the mirror and say, well, there's been a couple of consistencies here, John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson, and I'm not moving on from Lamar Jackson. So, you would have to put that. It'd be John Harbaugh. Monken to me is one of the best offensive minds the Ravens have had. And I think it'd be a shame if he were to get moved on from. I don't know if there was like disagreements. Again, I'm not in that locker room, so I don't know. But if that's the route that they take, you're going to have to make sure you get that hire right, first of all, because I think Monken was, and I saw this as well on social media a bunch, Monken was dealt a bad hand this year in some aspects. Now, is Monken perfect? No. There are some things with his offense that I've had problems with ever since he came to Baltimore. That includes starting too slow and then not being able to get the foot on the gas the right way, sometimes taking the foot off of the gas. Sometimes you start super fast if you're Todd Monken in this Ravens offense, and then, all of a sudden you just forget how to play football, forget how to play call. Like those things happen way too consistently with this offense. But I also think with the offensive line that he was working with this year and, obviously some of the injuries that happened this season, again, everybody has to deal with that type of stuff. I'm not saying that only Todd Monken has to deal with that, but I think that his offense can be successful, and we've seen it be successful. This isn't like Todd Monken. It's just this Ravens offense under Monken. It's just been like middling for the entire time that he's been with the team, these 3 seasons. I mean, this year, Baltimore finished as the best rushing offense in the league and the 11th best passing offense in the league, despite having to go with some Cooper Rush action. And Tyler Huntley played great for them. But again, like you were playing backups. 2 years ago, they were the best rushing offense and the best passing offense. His first year, the Ravens were the 3rd best rushing offense and the 5th best passing offense. So 5 out of 6 categories, 3 years rushing offense and 3 years passing offense. Todd Monken only finished below top 5 one time. And that was this year with injuries being really weird and stuff happening. So that's really good. And you see the creativity, you see the adjustment with personnel. And to me, it'd be a real shame if that were the move to make. If they were going to keep John Harbaugh, which again, I don't think they should, but if they were and they were going to do a coordinator change, it should be Zach Orr. It should. It's been 2 years of Zach Orr's defense. I don't think that they can go through another year of that. I just, again, Orr was dealt a little bit of a bad hand too, right? We can talk about that where the pass rush, like he didn't have a lot of pass rushers to work with this year, right? Like we can acknowledge that, especially when Nnamdi went down. But much like Todd Monken, there are some flaws here with Zach Orr that I've been very upset with over the course of his tenure. Mainly, you're playing 10 yards off guys on almost every single play. Some of the blitzes are very weirdly timed. Like Monken, there are some weird play calls. And sometimes, like with Monken and, forgetting to run the ball or use Derrick Henry or whatnot, like defensively, it's different offense versus defense. But the problem is we shouldn't even be having this conversation in the first place. The Ravens need a reset here with their coaching staff. And again, I understand that if Harbaugh goes, everybody goes. Maybe a guy 2 stays based off what the new hire wants. But to me, this is at the top. I just feel like moving on from a coordinator or two, because Josina Anderson didn't necessarily specify in her report whether it was one or both coordinators. Seems like Ian Rappaport was focusing more on the offensive side of the ball. It's just delaying the inevitable to me. I've lost faith in John Harbaugh in terms of his ability to lead this team to a Super Bowl anymore. And, it's not for lack of trying. I mean, I tried to hold on as long as I could here, but I think after last season, for those that are everydayers and watch me a lot and know my stance on it, I had said, like, after last year, I mean, I thought they should have promoted McDonald. I didn't think realistically they were going to move on from Harbaugh because he had made the AFC Championship game, even though I thought making McDonald the head coach was the right move at that time, but I wasn't anticipating them doing that. I thought something was going to happen last year. I thought, okay, this kind of feels like it took a step back. The game itself wasn't on the coaching staff as much as it had been in previous years. And, this one as well, there are execution issues. But again, where does all this stuff fall? It falls on the head coach, not having your team prepared, execution stuff, penalties, sloppiness, lack of discipline. Like, Harbaugh's admitted in the past at times, like, hey, it's his responsibility to get those guys ready to play. And, if you move on from Todd Monken, I feel like I feel like you're taking steps backwards there. I feel like at least if you were to move on from Zach Orr and hire another guy, bring another guy in there, it probably has more experience, right? I think that'd be the number one trait I'd be looking for in that regard. I think you could at least take a step forward with that because I just, two extremely slow starts for Zach Orr's defenses. He's needed veteran help both years. It's felt like, they brought in veteran help for him last year. And again, like with Pagano, that was a before the season hire, whereas the Dean Pease thing was during the year, last year. But even still, I feel like that is at least something where I'd be like, okay, it's still the wrong decision not to move on from Harbaugh, but at least you can understand that. I think that, Todd Monken has done a lot less to get fired or moved on from than Zach Orr. And, we see look, nobody's safe after just a couple of years of coaching. I mean, we see guys get fired after 1 year. We see guys get fired after half a year of coaching in this league, head coaches as well. And sometimes when it's just not working, it's not working. And, the Ravens had a lot of options to choose from when they decided to hire Zach Orr. Obviously McDonald leaves and they had a lot of internal options, whether it had been Anthony Weaver or Denard Wilson or a couple of other names. They chose Zach Orr. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked the way that it's needed to. And I think the Ravens defense took strides this year, but that's the problem is you can't start this slow 2 years in a row and then still continue to have some issues here. You got to tackle better. You got to be more disciplined. And again, all that stuff does fall back on John Harbaugh, which again is it feels like the worst case scenario would be moving on from your better coordinator, keeping your worst coordinator, and then keeping the head coach that, again, practically, I know not everybody in the fan base, but a lot of the fan base has lost faith in. So coming up, we'll talk about if major changes are coming or not for this Ravens team, both from a personnel and a coaching perspective. We'll talk about the latest, so be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Zocdoc. Finding a doctor you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. You want someone in-network, nearby, with availability, but you also want a doctor who really listens, makes you feel comfortable, explains things clearly, and helps you walk out feeling confident about your next step. Your diamond in the rough doctor exists, and finding them is easy with Zocdoc. Zocdoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can choose someone you truly connect with. And I love that you can search for a specialty or symptoms and quickly find the right fit, and being able to choose in-person or video visits makes scheduling way easier. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. And the show is brought to you by Ultimate QB Football Legend. Hey guys, the draft picks positions are set and so many teams are looking for their franchise QB. Everyone should become a pro QB, getting drafted first overall by the Ravens. Well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a number one draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the number one QB career mode game on the mobile app stores and introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. Sign contracts, train, and upgrade yourself, build chemistry, and evolve of your teammates, give input to your GM on roster moves, play the actual games in 2D, and rise through the ranks to become a pro football legend. You'll deal with the ups and downs of a QB career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama, and every choice shapes your journey. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline. Perfect for when you want to sneak in a quick game or two on the go. Just head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in the App Store. We've got something special just for you guys. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB, football legend, QB1. It's your legacy. Moving along, our second segment here of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. Ravens off-season day 2. Doesn't feel great. But honestly, it was a tough season for this team. Didn't deserve to make the playoffs anyway. But thanks so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Again, we still do 5 days a week in the off-season. I've never missed an episode of the show. We are year-round here, so we'll be talking all the Ravens coaching moves, free agent moves, trade moves, draft moves as we get ready for 2026. Obviously, a long way to go till then, but we'll have you covered. So we'll still have some bonus episodes when there are headlines. We'll have instant reactions after big news. Watch alongs. I'll have to take a break till August because there are going to be no games till August. But we have so much Ravens content here. Plus, if you want some extra add-on content, the Everydayer Club is active for the whole network. So if you want Locked On Ravens, you get exclusive access to a one-on-one text chain. You get Discord server, ad-free episodes. We do Q&As every week and a lot more stuff. So be sure to check out the link in the description below, or go to the Locked On website and do a little bit of research on that Locked On Ravens tab over there. All right. Major changes. Are they coming for the Ravens? Well, look, I think that if the Ravens move on from a coordinator, that would be a pretty major change. Like, obviously, that seems to be what the consensus is right now. And that consensus obviously can change, right? Everything can happen in a split second. And I think that even though that can happen, pretty much for the past week or two, a lot of the reporting has been that Harbaugh is, more safe than out, or, he's safe. Like, it just feels like that's where this is headed right now. And again, like, something can happen, but that's my prediction. It's not what I would personally do. Again, I would have had John Harbaugh out of here last year. But I think that this situation for the Ravens, it's going to define a lot about who this organization is moving forward. And I think it's going to tell everybody a lot about Steve Bisciotti and kind of how he views this franchise, where he talked about how he wants to win. He wants to win now. I think keeping John Harbaugh would contradict that. And I think it would signal a lot of complacency within the organization of just having good to great regular seasons, making the playoffs, and you fizzle out. And this is the first time really in the Lamar Jackson era, I feel like there's a real danger of the Ravens losing a chunk of fans for, a decision here where, people will still watch and all that stuff. Maybe some people won't, but, I think that most people will still watch, but it will just be like a kind of checked out until, the move is made. And I just think that with Harbaugh, it's not about him not being a good coach. I think Harbaugh's a good coach. Like, I know some people don't think that. I do. But at the end of the day, you need something else. A new voice, as people have said. We talked about it yesterday. Shannon Sharp and Chad Johnson. Ravens might need a new voice. To me, it's not a might. To me, it is yes, they do need a new voice. And this situation with Harbaugh, by the way, has now reached a national stage. It's national. And you can even look at not just in the Lamar Jackson era for John Harbaugh. There was a stat on First Things First, OT, that they put out. Ravens wins and losses in games decided by 5 points or less. Under John Harbaugh, they're 45-61. And 61 losses are the most in the NFL since Harbaugh was hired in 2008. Now, again, like, he's one of the longest tenured coaches in the league right now, but there are a lot of other guys. And again, like, 45-61 is nothing to write home about. That's an under 500 record. It's not close either. This season, the Ravens were 0-4 in games decided by 5 points or less. Remember when the Chiefs last year would win like every single one-score game? That was good coaching and good execution. And I thought that for the Ravens, they had bad coaching and bad execution, but it all falls back on the head coach. I mean, it does. And with the national stage that it's reaching, a lot of people, like, at least opinionated media, not like obviously the reports from people, that's just, what they're being told or whatnot, or what the latest information is. That is all signaling, hey, Harbaugh is more safe than out and all that. But the opinionated talk shows and whatnot, radio hosts, everybody, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people feel like Harbaugh needs to be the one that gets canned here. And at this point, like, where are you as a franchise where you are the laughing stock of the league again? And I said this a couple weeks ago. They were the laughing stock of the league 3 times this year. Well, you can add another one because now it's 4 with the way that this Pittsburgh game ended, because everybody knows with this team it's the same script. They blow the fourth quarter leads. The playoff collapses, and, they have talented rosters, but they just can't get over that hump. And again, what I will say is coaches have been fired for less. And now you have a clear crossroads here where it's right in front of you, in my opinion. Because at this point, like, I think for a lot of the fan base with Harbaugh, it truly is a breaking point where it's just been holding on and holding on and holding on. And that thread just continues, like each little thread continues to, like, it snaps, and, you're holding on by that string, and then each thread just, all right, something else happens. A thread snaps, then another thread snaps. And all of a sudden, like the thread, like it's the last one. I think that last one is snapped for a lot of people here. And it's like, what else do you need to see? This shouldn't be run as like a friendship type deal here, where we know John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta are neighbors, and, Steve Bisciotti and John Harbaugh are friends and all this. And again, the Ravens are a loyal organization. And I've said over and over again on this show, I'd rather have a loyal organization than a not loyal organization, because I think you get a lot more done with a loyal organization. You get a lot more benefits if you're a loyal organization. But the Ravens have been over loyal a lot of times. And the consistent theme there, it's Steve Bisciotti. It is. And so, when it comes to guys, and it's Harbaugh too, and it's Eric DeCosta too. But again, if I'm going to say everything goes to the top with coaching, it goes to the top with the organization as well, right? I'm not going to say that one way, but not say it the other way. Where again, like, everyone has a role to play. Like, I think Harbaugh is over loyal. I think DeCosta's over loyal. I think Bisciotti's over loyal. And again, that can be good in some aspects. Like that can be used to your advantage, and it has. The Ravens have. But in this situation, it's not good. And all year next year, if you were to come back, it'd be questions about his job, regardless. And again, like, it's a lose-lose, because if the Ravens win a lot of games, it's going to be up. Well, they can't get over the hump. It's like Lamar, right? That's what everybody talks about. It's lose-lose for Lamar. And again, I think Lamar silenced a lot of haters with his performance in the fourth quarter. I think the team let him down, but like, your quarterback went out there and he did his thing. And everybody who, was doubting Lamar and say, oh, the Ravens need to trade Lamar, do all this. Well, they were silenced pretty quickly. But guess what? The same theme persisted. And when that theme persists over and over and over again, and the consistent is still there, well, you're not going to get very far. Maybe it can luck into something. Maybe Lamar Jackson can put on a Superman cape over and over and over again and do his thing. But at the end of the day, if you don't move on from John Harbaugh, I'm pretty sure that's it's probably not going to go. They'll probably have a better year next year than this year if they make the right moves, and that's another conversation. But coming up, we'll talk about what's next for this team, because again, even though John Harbaugh deserves a lot of blame, it's not all on him. It's also on Eric DeCosta. So stay tuned. Plenty coming up here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing of NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. It always brings something new. You got boost bonuses and surprises when you do open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. Plus, for me, I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy, so I'm always looking, especially with the Nuggets. They're injured right now, but I'm always looking, especially on NBA Happy Hour, for what FanDuel has to offer on the Nuggets and honestly across the entire league. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping here at NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks again for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. If you have a friend or a family member who's a Ravens fan or wants some daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them over our way here on Locked On Ravens. We have incredible communities here, video community, audio community, social media community. It's incredible. Plus, you can follow me on social media at CashTrekker34 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. Plus, we are going to do Facebook this year. So Kevin Ostraker, my name, you can follow my page over there for Ravens updates as well. What's next for this team? There are a couple of housekeeping things we should go over here just for the team in general as we look ahead. The Ravens have a lot of free agents they're going to have to make decisions on. Obviously, the big ones, Tyler Linderbaum, Isaiah Likely. You also have guys like Daniel Falele, Jadobe Awuzie, Jordan Stout, DeAndre Hopkins, Patrick Ricard, Darius Washington, Tremont Jones, Kyle Van Noy, Charlie Kohler, Alohi Gilman, Keaton Mitchell, who's a restricted free agent, and a couple more guys thrown in there as well. But you also have potential trade candidates or guys who could cut. Marlon Humphrey, potentially, Roquan Smith, Rashad Bateman. These are names that you could either trade or cut and save some money or get assets back for these guys. This roster is going to look different next season. And like I said at the end of our second segment, while John Harbaugh deserves a lot of blame, and I think they should move on from him, Eric DeCosta is not free of blame here. I think that while I was on here, and I won't deny it, I called this team the best roster in football before the year, but I had acknowledged that there are a couple of big roster flaws that could really come back to bite them. And yeah, happened in probably the worst way ever because guard and pass rush, or I guess O-line and pass rush were the two. And look at what happened. They had no pass rushers that were viable and consistent this season, and their offensive line was just abysmal for most of the year. And the investments are in the wrong place. I think they have to really change their philosophy here. You can't care about comp picks anymore the way that they have. You need to, on the second day of free agency, go give the second best guard on the market a 4-year, $65 million deal. Like, break the bank for somebody. And again, hopefully Lamar's contract situation gets resolved. Because remember, when that whole situation happened in 2023, that deal did not get done before draft. I guess technically it got done 4 hours before it. But it was on the day of the draft. So the Ravens had that huge franchise tag hit on their books, which essentially cost them almost all their free agency. You need to get this Lamar Jackson contract situation figured out before the start of free agency, or else you're going to lose that entire window, at least more than what you could. You're not going to be able to offer as much as you could if you resolve that situation before. So that, to me, has to be priority number one for this team. Getting some guys under contract, like, again, both Tyler Linderbaum and Isaiah Likely expressed interest in coming back to Baltimore. Now, I would anticipate it's probably more likely Linderbaum comes back than Likely, based off the fact they signed Mark Andrews to that extension, which, I didn't agree with at the time, and I still don't now. I think they should have chose Likely there. But it's just kind of like you need to change your philosophy here, where you invest so much in your secondary and these comp picks. And I get it. You need draft picks when you have a quarterback on a big deal like that. But when you pick 11 guys in the draft last year and not all of them make it, well, that's a waste of assets. And I said that literally the second they picked Garrett Dellinger in the 7th round. I said, not all this draft class is making the roster. It's a waste. You look at some of the key ages for the Ravens players. Mike Green is 21. Malachi Starks, 22. Nate Wiggins, 22. Roger Rosengarten, 23. Kyle Hamilton, 24. Zay Flowers, 25. Travis Jones, 26. Lamar, he's 28, although he's going to be 29 tomorrow. Roquan Smith, 28. Marlon Humphrey, 29. Mark Andrews is 30. Ronnie Stanley's 31. Derrick Henry's 32. So, you have some promising young pieces, but a lot of your core guys, Lamar and Derek, and if you want to call Roquan a key piece, he might not be back next year, but you want to call him Zay, I think Hamilton. You're kind of, this is your window right here, like it is. And every year you waste a window, it's just it's terrible. You have a real opportunity here where these guys, before you know it, Lamar is going to be 30, and he's not necessarily going to slow down or anything like that. Like the second he hits 30, all of a sudden, but he's not 23 anymore. Like, you need to be able to maximize those windows, and that starts with roster building. And I feel like with those flaws, we saw, like, 2023 was a masterclass from Eric DeCosta in terms of bringing in vets. He had guys come in like Davian Clowney and Van Noy that first year, and Odell was great from a leadership perspective. Aguilar made big plays in 2023. I mean, I could go on and on about the guys that they signed that year. Ronald Darby, like they signed so many good players that year. They need to get back to that because the last couple of years, it's been kind of hit or miss. Like this year, Chidobe Awuzie was awesome. He was awesome. Then you have like Jair Alexander. That whole thing failed. And a couple of other guys like didn't really make impacts. Like, I thought D-Hop was awesome. Like I thought that was a great move for them, but they didn't use him a lot. So this feels like everybody needs to get on the same page here, and it needs to happen very, very quickly. The Ravens' home opponents and away opponents for next year, they'll play Bengals, Browns, Steelers, Jaguars, Titans, Saints, Buccaneers, Chargers at home. And away, they'll play Bengals, Browns, Steelers, Falcons, Colts, Texans, Panthers, Bills, Cowboys. So another trip to Highmark to play Buffalo. I like that schedule. I think the NFC South is an up-and-coming division, and the AFC South is really good, and I expect Daniel Jones to be back for the Colts and everything. So I think that, it's a more challenging schedule than I think some people anticipate it being, but it's better than what they had to deal with this year at times, especially with the start and everything along those lines. So yeah, just a tough way to go out with the Loop missed field goal. And again, like it's okay to criticize Tyler Loop for the game he had. I mean, he didn't have a good game. He had a couple of kickoff blunders. He missed a field goal. See a lot of people attacking him on social media. And, I don't condone any of that. That to me, it's taking it too far. Like, yeah, he had a bad game. He understands that. But, attacking the guy for it, like, that to me is taking it a little bit too far. But the Ravens got to regroup. They're going to have a long offseason to think about what happened, and hopefully they're able to get back on track next season. And again, when any news happens, coaching fires or hires or players or something, we'll be here on Locked On Ravens talking about it. We'll also still be here 5 days a week on Locked On Ravens. So that's all I have for you here today. Coming up tomorrow, we will have more Ravens talk and discussion. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.